The more information that we learn from sources like private investigator Steve Fisher, the more we question the handling by the LAPD of the 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez's death investigation. The LAPD's handling of this investigation has faced significant public scrutiny regarding the secrecy surrounding evidence and for what appears to be a lack of urgency from day one in finding who did this to Celeste. We are now learning about the LAPD releasing the Tesla back to David after only 48 hours. Keep in mind that the body that was found in pieces had not even been identified. Legal analysts and private investigators have pointed out that once a vehicle is released, the chain of custody is broken, potentially compromising forensic evidence. A key aspect of a death investigation hold is to protect the integrity of the investigation, ensuring that evidence is not compromised, contaminated, or lost. It allows investigators time to analyze evidence while waiting for toxicology results without the pressure of having to release items. It's questionable why the LAPD detectives in charge made a decision to release the vehicle that held a severed body after only 48 hours, when they still had no idea who this person was, and if there was a relation to the owner of the Tesla. On November 21, 2025, the LAPD obtained a court order to place a security hold on Celeste's medical examiner's records, which prevented the release of the cause and manner of death to the public. The LAPD Robbery Homicide Division stated on November 25th that they sought to seal the records in order to protect the integrity of the investigation. This statement was made as a response to the medical examiner's office statement from the previous day on November 24th, where they stated that an informal request for the security hold had already been denied by the medical examiner's office on September 15, 2025, due to insufficient justification, and such holds being virtually unheard of in other counties. Here's a short timeline. September 8th, Celeste was discovered in the Tesla's front trunk. September 10th, the Tesla was released and returned to an impound lot for David to pick up. No ID had been made, nor was there a cause or manner of death at this time. September 15th, the first security hold request placed by the LAPD was denied due to insufficient justification. September 16th, Celeste was positively identified. While the LAPD's reasons may be rational to them, there is still no justification to not have a formal press conference or public address on this case after 5 months. The victim in the Tesla deserved that. This is one of the reasons that the public believes that the LAPD had been protecting David and was distancing him from this gruesome case. And we can go on with comments and clarifications from the LAPD and the district attorney's office that made the alarm bells go off as we questioned not only the LAPD, but what powerful people are behind David that are perhaps trying to make this all disappear. It just takes learning who David's father is and what he does for a living to make us look at the LAPD with a side eye after all these inconsistencies. David's father's law firm represents the Jeffrey Epstein estate, and he is a digital expert lawyer who is handling evidence for very high-profile cases. But let's get back to the 48-hour hold reporting. On February 1st, 2026, Lauren Conlon from LA Magazine reported that private investigator Steve Fisher had shared that he had obtained information that the Los Angeles Police Department had only held David's Tesla for 48 hours to process evidence and was then returned to the impound lot for David to retrieve. Let's remember that this is the Tesla that was holding a 14-year-old girl's severed body. I feel it's important to emphasize again as we process this information. The vehicle was released by the Los Angeles Police Department and was ready for pickup on September 10, 2025, after only 48 hours. Even though the investigation was still ongoing, the victim whose body allegedly had been severed had not been identified. No cause or manner of death were found, and no suspects had been named. It's important, too, to note that the investigation into the death of Celeste Rivas Hernandez has been described as a long-term and ongoing homicide probe, with grand jury proceedings occurring months after the initial discovery. So clearly, this is considered a serious and complex investigation. But regardless, if the LAPD had not immediately identified the dismembered body as that of a child, at the time when the vehicle was on hold or hadn't identified it, it was still in that state and warranted a serious investigation. So the 48-hour hold still appears to be irregular, especially seeing that they still had not explored if there was any connection between the deceased individual with David or any of the many individuals that the LAPD claims drove his vehicle. Hello and welcome to JungleStream. These are my thoughts and speculations based on the latest reports that the Tesla registered to musician David Anthony Burke was released from police impound after a relatively short hold of 48 hours, despite the discovery of a body in the front trunk. I'd love to know what you think, so add your thoughts in the comments section on YouTube. If you're listening on the podcast platforms, please subscribe there. Don't forget to like and subscribe to JungleStream. Of course, for legal reasons, I do have to mention that while we are doing our best to verify that the information retained from videos, posts, texts, group chats, live stream chats, and photographs is real, we cannot confirm with 100% certainty that all is authentic and none has been altered, because we have no tangible evidence from law enforcement to corroborate at this time. For this reason, we will say that this is all alleged, but in my opinion, it looks real and authentic. The vehicle was initially towed on September 5, 2025, for being illegally parked and abandoned. Celeste Rivas Hernandez, the 14-year-old rumored girlfriend of David, was discovered in the front trunk on September 8, 2025, by the Los Angeles Police Department after the tow yard personnel called to report a foul odor. Because the vehicle may be treated as a long-term piece of evidence in a homicide investigation, I decided to do some research on how common this short hold is for cases like these and found many red flags. I found in my initial research that vehicles involving a death investigation are typically held as evidence for at least 60 days, though they may be kept for much longer, potentially months or years, depending on the complexity of the case. The vehicle remains in police custody until forensic processing, scene analysis, and legal proceedings allow for its release. While some vehicles may be released after 60 days, vehicles involved in serious crimes may be held for up to 120 days or longer. The purpose of the car hold is to preserve evidence, process for forensic evidence such as fingerprints and DNA, and in order for the investigators to reconstruct the scene. The owner may need to pay towing and storage fees before reclaiming the car, provided the police have finished their investigation, but in cases where the vehicle was used in a severe felony, the state might seek to permanently seize or forfeit the vehicle. With that being said, something definitely seems off in all of this, seeing the circumstances and state in which Celeste was found. There are many oddities in why the Los Angeles Police Department would deem it appropriate to release the vehicle after only 48 hours. So I decided to look into general procedures for police departments, and this is what I found. In cases involving detached bodies, the vehicles are considered primary crime scenes, and police typically retain them for as long as they have evidentiary value, which can range from several weeks to multiple decades. The timeline is dictated by the following factors, and is general just to give us an idea of what goes into the retention periods. I will go over the Los Angeles Police Department's general procedures after. So generally speaking, number 1, forensics and processing generally takes from 1 to 3 weeks, while standard investigative holds often last from 3 to 5 business days. A complex scene involving a severed body requires extensive forensic work and more time, but generally speaking, many departments have policies to process a vehicle for immediate evidence. Technicians meticulously collect biological evidence, such as blood, tissue, and DNA, along with fingerprints and photography within 3 to 5 business days, and if the scene is severely disturbed, processing can take much longer than the typical 3-day turnaround. In the complex case, the investigative unit would then provide a legal reason to extend a hold. Number 2, active evidence holds can take weeks to months. If the vehicle itself is considered a primary crime scene, such as in a homicide, police may hold it until the initial investigation is complete, or until a prosecutor decides it is no longer needed. In complex cases, because there is no statute of limitations on homicide, the police have broad authority to hold the vehicle indefinitely while the investigation is active. This hold ensures that crucial evidence remains available for analysis, follow-up investigation, or court proceedings. The hold can last for days, weeks, or even years, depending on the complexity of the case and the need for re-examination, such as in cold cases. Number 3. The legal and judicial resolution generally takes months to years. Since the vehicle could be used as trial evidence, the prosecutors may keep the car until the conclusion of the trial and any subsequent appeals, to ensure the physical evidence remains available for a jury or defense team to inspect. Vehicles may be held until a judge orders the property to be released. If no suspect is charged, as in cold cases, the vehicle may be held for years because it may remain as the only container of potential evidence. Number 4. Vehicles could be held for practical and biological challenges. If a body was in the vehicle for any significant length of time, especially in cases involving severe disassemblement of a body or decomposition, the biological damage and odor are often permanent. specialized cleaning may not be able to restore the vehicles to safe and habitable conditions, so insurance companies usually declare these a total loss. Vehicle holds at the Los Angeles Police Department. In a major crime investigation of a severed body found in a vehicle, the Los Angeles Police Department can hold the car for a reasonable amount of time, which for severe crimes often means until the conclusion of the trial, or when it is no longer needed as evidence. While 48-hour holds exist for minor violations, homicide investigations often result in vehicles being held for months or even years. 48 hours is widely considered too short for a vehicle hold in an investigation involving a disarticulated body. In California, the law allows for significantly longer holds depending on the complexity of the forensic needs and the case status. The specific duration often follows these phases. Vehicles are retained as evidence when the car is considered a crime scene or was used to commit an offense. In death investigations, the Los Angeles Police Department can place a formal hold on a vehicle when it is considered vital evidence or contains a deceased person. The duration of a car being held depends on the time required to process the car for DNA, forensics, and other evidence. While simple evidence processing might take a few days to a week in California, complex death investigations can extend holds for months. However, once forensics evidence processing is complete, the vehicle is often returned. To protect the integrity of an ongoing investigation, the LAPD could put a security hold to prevent the release of information or the car itself. This legal measure can even block the medical examiner from releasing findings if the body was found in the vehicle. A 48-hour period is not a standard for evidence holds in death investigations in California. There is actually no fixed maximum time limit in California for holding a car as evidence in a criminal investigation. As previously mentioned, if a vehicle contains a deceased person or is considered a crime scene, law enforcement has the authority to hold it indefinitely for cold cases until the conclusion of a trial, until all appeals are exhausted, or the offender is convicted. Let's get back to the recent reports which indicate that the Tesla was initially only held for a short period of 48 hours, even though the investigation into the discovery of what was still an unknown severed body in David's Tesla was ongoing. Private investigator Steve Fisher reported on January 29, 2026, that the Tesla was sent to downtown Impound on September 10th for David or someone acting on his behalf to pick up, but it didn't occur until January 29th. He further explained that the Tesla is now registered to a new individual. Fisher's post on the X account for SF Investigates on January 29, 2026 at 9:41 p.m. reads as follows, quote, David's Tesla. The vehicle in which Celeste Rivas Hernandez was found was held by the LAPD for only 48 hours to process evidence. After that, it was returned to the impound lot for David to retrieve, which he had not done until today. The Tesla was scheduled to go to auction tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., and I had planned to attend and inspect it. However, in the final hours before the auction, David, or someone with power of attorney acting on his behalf, picked it up. When I checked last week, the storage fees were approximately $10,500, as the vehicle had been released and available for pickup since September 10th, before Celeste had even been identified. I hope the thought of that vehicle haunts David and anyone else that knew Celeste was in the trunk for the rest of their lives. End quote. Later that evening at 10:50 p.m., Fisher posted another message on SF Investigates X account, quote, The vehicle was held by LAPD from September 8th through the 10th under a 22-6 55.5 evidence hold, then transferred to a downtown LA impound on September 10th. I attached the auction listing which appeared several weeks ago, end quote. In conclusion, if a body is found in a vehicle, police departments typically keep the car for as long as it has evidentiary value to a criminal investigation, which can range from a few days to several decades. In some scenarios, a vehicle is held until the conclusion of legal proceedings. This can include the duration of a trial, the completion of appeals process, or until a judge orders that the property be released. 48 hours appears to be insufficient time for forensics processing, since a vehicle containing severed remains is a complex crime regardless if the disassemblement did not occur in the vehicle. Detailed processing, including DNA collection, fingerprinting, and deep analysis, often takes several days to a week for initial work alone. So releasing the Tesla after only 48 hours is unusual for a case like this. No cause or manner of death, no suspects, and Celeste had not even been identified. Let that sink in. The LAPD had not identified the severed remains in the vehicle's front trunk, and they had already released the car. Do we need to say more on the LAPD doing everything in its power to protect David Anthony Burke from day one? This is inexcusable. When no suspects are identified, the car is often the primary source of evidence. Law enforcement can legally hold it indefinitely to preserve any potential clues that might link a future suspect in the crime. If a car is seized under a warrant for searching, a reasonable period is typically cited as 7 to 10 days. Common traffic-related holds like driving with a suspended license are fixed at 30 days, which is already much longer than 48 hours. Steve Fisher mentioned this exact point. Quote, "The vehicle had been released and available for pickup since September 10th, before Celeste had even been identified. I hope the thought of that vehicle haunts David and anyone else that knew Celeste was in the trunk for the rest of their lives." End quote. I will note that no formal charges have been filed against David, and he has not officially been named as a suspect in a homicide. While David was identified as a suspect by LAPD sources, according to news and media outlets, the LAPD immediately came to David's defense in November of 2025 and stated that because a cause of death was not immediately determined, it was unclear if criminal culpability existed beyond the concealment of a body, and there was no evidence of that. But yet, the question is why, despite not having that cause of death, they still felt it was appropriate to release the vehicle after only 48 hours. The Tesla was so dirty that it looked like it had been abandoned for months. It had never been reported as lost or stolen, and still the police didn't find it odd. Instead, they once again came to David's defense and stated that the car was used by multiple people, making direct and immediate connection to the owner difficult to establish in the first 48 hours. And yet, I will remind us all again that they released the vehicle after only 48 hours before the victim was identified, meaning that there was no possibility to connect the victim with anyone. They further added that, in cases such as this, law enforcement often holds a vehicle for forensic analysis rather than detaining the owner, provided the owner is cooperating, as they await toxicology reports and definitive forensic evidence to establish a cause of death and connection to the suspect. Let's break this last statement down. The LAPD did not detain David when the remains were found, nor did they interrogate him, according to unofficial LAPD sources. But they instead released the vehicle before they had identified the remains, which means that they couldn't have established already that the victim was not connected in some way to David or those in his orbit. I mention this again because the LAPD felt the need to repeat this, but in a different way, and all in what appears to be an attempt to clear David. The LAPD justifies what they did by saying that many people drove the vehicle, so because many people drove the car, that's it? David and his group of friends are all in the clear? The next point in their statement is that they do not detain the owner of the vehicle provided they are cooperating. The question is whether David was ever cooperating. Every defense attorney says that their client is cooperating in these types of investigations, but was David actually cooperating? According to media and news outlets, reports based on LAPD sources, David had not been cooperating and had not been interrogated even, but we don't know what the official answer is, because the LAPD and District Attorney's Office does not find that Celeste Rivas Hernandez's life mattered enough to hold a press conference or address to the public. Their doing so would bring the spotlight to David, and we've seen how hard they've worked at keeping him far away from this investigation. There is no justifying the sickening manner that the LAPD has treated Celeste and handled this investigation. It appears that David was, and still is, being protected by very powerful people. The brief initial hold and subsequent release of the vehicle is being questioned, particularly following updates that the investigation is a homicide probe. Yet, the LAPD continues to maintain that the measures that they've taken are standard for a homicide investigation to ensure justice for the victim without tipping off potential suspects. We saw in the LAPD process and procedures that I covered earlier that the LAPD puts security holds on vehicles and records as investigations are ongoing, but what is not standard is that during the initial and intense phase of the investigation, as in this case, in September of 2025, when no official charges or arrests had been made, and yet someone still made the decision to release the vehicle after only 48 hours. What is evident is that there are many within the LAPD that have been looking out for David and have been distancing him from the crime that occurred in or around his Tesla. Many online believe that when the numerous irregularities of this case came to light, which includes the Tesla having been released after a hold of only 48 hours, the decision was made to seal Celeste's records in order to protect the case from even those within the LAPD working with David's team. The statements from the LAPD from the very beginning as they attempted to downplay and disparage the case is infuriating. A 14-year-old girl was found in pieces in the celebrity's front trunk, and the LAPD had the boldness to say that they don't see a crime? This should be upsetting to all of us because Celeste had every right to live just like any other child. And yet her abuser is free to live his life with no care in the world as his daddy and those protecting him continue to keep him as far as possible from any accountability. Just imagine the frustration and discouragement that Celeste's family must feel as they hear those individuals in the LAPD. Just imagine their helplessness as they see all the obstacles set by those in charge. In the early phase of the investigation that have ensured the freedom that David still has today. The need for a secret jury is a result of those obstacles that were set in place, and people still have the audacity to question Celeste's family and blame them. David always had power and clearly still does. So imagine what that poor family must have gone through while Celeste was alive, and what they must be feeling as they see law enforcement very clearly go out of their way to continue to protect David. What is clear is that where this case stands would not be the same if the alleged predator and abuser was not David Anthony Burke, and the child weren't Celeste Rivas Hernandez, and it is inexcusable